Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Nintendo 3DS and compare it against the PlayStation Vita and see how these two consoles kind of compare in 2025. Now, it's very interesting. The thing that I love about both these consoles is that there is still a massive community behind both. It's interesting because in terms of the sales, in terms of the longevity of both, you could make the argument that the Nintendo 3DS was the better selling console. That one was the one that brought more, not necessarily brought more to the table, but brought more sales to the table. The PlayStation Vita, on the other hand, I think has had a beautiful kind of future ahead of it because when it first came out, I think it was overlooked, but over time, definitely the PlayStation Vita has become kind of like this, kind of side thought when anybody looks at any current generation of console. You could look at the Nintendo Switch, the Steam Decks, Asus ROG Ally, like any of these other types of handhelds, and you could see how similar they look to the PlayStation Vita. Not to say that they copied it, but there was definitely a lot of inspiration of the PlayStation Vita to these other type of consoles, to be honest. Now, when you're taking a look at both of these side by side, they're both very different. The Nintendo 3DS and PlayStation Vita came out around the same time, but with the Nintendo 3DS, this was that dual screen device, something that we were familiar with at the time. It was a pretty big upgrade coming from both the DSi and especially the Nintendo DS. With this thing, the screen was bigger at the top, smaller at the bottom. Glad we had a bigger display there. You were basically going through and getting this clamshell design, the cameras on this thing, but you were also going through and getting a more powerful console compared to the previous generation. So that was something that was very, very cool at that time. The PlayStation Vita was giving you the single OLED display when they first came out, then they eventually ported it over to an LCD panel, which was such a downgrade. I have no idea why they switched over to the LCD, that was really weird. You were getting a really good display though on that OLED model. The OLED one was the one I had, and I loved that display so much. Both controls felt pretty good. I do like the controls more so on the PlayStation Vita though. I do feel like that console overall held up the best when it came down to the design, because that type of design definitely looks far better than the Nintendo 3DS kind of when it comes down to the futurability of it. But I think the 3DS still has such a unique design angle to it. Now, the thing, I would definitely say the screen looked better on the PlayStation Vita, but you did have that 3D toggle on the 3DS, which was kind of random, but that was an advantage for that type of console when it came down to it. It was like one of the gimmicky kind of things that was going on for that particular console. Both had memory card expansion, but the 3DS had a standard SD card. The PlayStation Vita had this proprietary memory card, which was a huge disadvantage. I think looking back, I wish Sony would have kept some sort of like non-proprietary type of memory card, because it is very, very annoying to have to find some of those. The 3DS standard SD card made things so much better in my personal opinion. So definitely when it comes down to the exterior, the 3DS wins, I think, with the memory card side of things and kind of just the usability, the way it looks. But the PlayStation Vita was basically giving you a better display, and I think it's held up better kind of how modern consoles kind of look and feel. The dual screen stuff, came and went, but the single screen with the joysticks on the side has definitely been the way a lot of consoles have been kind of coming out and being manufactured, at least for the last like 5 to 7 years. So that side kind of covers it up there. But when it comes down to battery life, interestingly enough, kind of the same type of battery life, not anything super crazy. But I will tell you, when it comes down to if you're going to on like the max end of things, the 3DS might be giving you an advantage there. But that's mostly because it was not as powerful as the PlayStation Vita. So because of that, you don't really need as much power to run to that thing compared to the 3DS. When you're looking at the PlayStation Vita, that thing was giving you a quad-core processor with 512 megabytes of RAM with 128 megabytes of VRAM. The 3DS was giving you a dual-core processor with 128 megabytes of RAM. So you can imagine that definitely from a power perspective, the Nintendo 3DS just wasn't as powerful as the PlayStation Vita. But both of these consoles were big step ups from the previous generation. Nintendo consoles were just never the most powerful consoles. They just have a lot of IP that they own, and they can go through and, if you want to play Zelda, Mario, Animal Crossing, any of those types of games, you're going to play them on the Nintendo, ecosystem. PlayStation, I think with the PS Vita, I don't think they had a lot of like crazy, amazing games, and I think their marketing just wasn't that great at that time too. So there weren't as many exclusives, or there weren't that many games on the PlayStation Vita compared to the 3DS. So that was kind of where this kind of the console wars kind of switched over more to the 3DS favor, because there were just way more games and way more marketing for the 3DS than the PlayStation Vita. Although this was a hard time for Nintendo because they were, losing sales on the Wii U. It was like really bad. At least with Sony, they still had a bunch of money they could kind of fund for the PlayStation Vita, because Sony is more than just a gaming console company. So from that side, that was also another really interesting thing kind of going on there too. Beyond that, though, when it kind of comes down to how these consoles hold up today, there's still a modding community behind both. Some of the PlayStation Vita and some of the 3DSs I don't think are able to be modded, but when it does kind of come down to kind of the curve of which one gained more, kind of popularity over time, I would almost want to say the PlayStation Vita is kind of like this sleeper hit where over time more and more people are kind of becoming more involved with that type of console. The 3DS, there were a bunch of people who played it 10 years ago or whatever when it first came out, but there's still a lot of people who play it, but it was always popular kind of for the most part. Not at first, but over time it became popular. The PlayStation Vita was very unpopular for a long period of time, and then it kind of became a little bit more popular. I would probably say though also, there's a lot more 3DS exclusive games that I've played than PlayStation Vita exclusive games. So looking back, when I look at the Nintendo 3DS, this is one of those types of gaming consoles that I always find myself playing games like via emulators or via the hardware that I actually own. The PlayStation Vita, not quite the same case. And I don't know if everyone feels like that, but that's kind of how I feel about somewhat of the experience that I've had with the Nintendo 3DS and the PlayStation Vita. There's still not really that much of an online community behind them. There's not really any more games being developed behind them anymore either. But as I've read online and as I've, because I've never modded a PlayStation Vita. I think the PlayStation Vita I have, I couldn't mod and I was very upset about that. But I have a 3DS that I've modded. And between both, there is still a lot of cool capability behind them. Maybe the 3DS has more of a community just because it was a more popular console. But I think the PlayStation Vita, when I pick it up and I kind of mess around with it with my hands, it's a really cool console. That thing looks beautiful. That thing has a beautiful display. The controls on that thing are really good. And I definitely like the way this console has impacted kind of the generation, after it. Like when I look at the 3DS, yeah, there's some things that some of the games brought at that time that were ported over. Like I think of Mario Kart 7. Like there's a lot of things that game brought that were ported over to Mario Kart 8 and 8 Deluxe. But when I look at the consoles, there's not really a lot of overlap. Like when I look at the 3DS and the Switch, maybe the software is kind of similar, but you could even make that argument with the DSi. I think with the PlayStation Vita, this kind of impacted kind of the design language of a lot of these consoles after. There's a reason the Switch looks more like a PlayStation Vita than a 3DS. And like I said, the Steam Deck, the Asus ROG Ally, all these other type of gaming handhelds that have came out after it, the PlayStation Vita is such a cool console from that standpoint. But I would still say the 3DS one in that particular situation, that is kind of how I feel about it. And when I kind of look at these particular consoles, in this day and age, definitely something like the Nintendo 3DS, I think was the winner for the most part. But I don't know how to describe it, but the PlayStation Vita won the, battle or won the fight, but maybe the the Nintendo 3DS won the fight, but maybe the PlayStation Vita won the war. I don't know the best example for it here, but maybe that's one way to look at it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.